Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Profit Tool Belt podcast. Today, we've got Karalynn Cromeens. Now, Karalynn is a construction lawyer in the United States. Now, if you're not in the United States, please don't worry and please don't skip ahead of this episode because what Karalynn's going to talk about is lien rights. Specifically, today's topic is how to collect your money with all due respect. Now, I've had Karalynn on the show before. She really knows construction law. She really knows the construction business, and she really knows how to get your money. So listen in. I'm sure she's going to give you a lot of tips and inside track on how to run the business a little bit smarter and a little bit tighter so that you can get past the collections issues you might have and also watch for the red flags that you might see before you go into a contract or a negotiation or an agreement. I hope you enjoy the episode, and let's get to Karalynn right away. Thanks. Karalynn Cromeens, how are you?
Great. How are you, Dominic?
Good. How do I refer to a lawyer? What's the official?
Esquire. No, I'm
Esquire. Nice. took you 0 seconds to drop that one. Actually, young man, it should be Esquire. Nice.
Dr. Karalynn, because it's a doctorate.
Yeah. Hey, my initials are DR, but I'm sadly not a doctor. Karalynn, you're a lawyer.
Yes, sir.
You're a good one.
In the construction industry, I'm awesome.
That's right. And yeah, very specifically, you're a construction industry lawyer. Actually, that's what we're here to talk about today. And thanks for joining me. You've been on the show before.
Yep.
Did such a good job. So there's two ways to look at it. You said you did such a good job, we asked you back, or we kind of missed some stuff, we should bring you back. So, but I'm joking.
Either way, I just love to talk.
But today we're here to talk about how to collect your money with all due respect.
Yes, sir. That's an important part, right? You do all the hard work. You need to get paid. You got people to pay. You got to feed your family. It's an important part of the whole, construction process, since the construction industry runs on credit.
Yeah, it does. So let's take a step back for a second. Karalynn Cromeens, who the heck are you? And how is it you come to be speaking to all these contractors, forward-facing contractors all around the world?
Yeah, so I'm Karalynn Cromeens. I grew up in the rural town in rural Illinois, northern Illinois. I grew up in a family of construction, right? My grandfather owned an excavation company. I worked some of my first jobs were for my uncle who owned an irrigation company. So I'm familiar with the family business and what it takes to keep the doors open and the internal struggles that are faced on a daily basis, like how to make payroll, who's going to review this contract, all of that stuff. I say that to say that I went to law. So then I went to law school. And I wasn't planning on heading in construction law. But then at the end of law school, my husband and I started a material supply business. And so I very much had to become familiar with collections and how to collect our money. And I got really good at it. So now I do it for a lot of people. Right. But it turns out that my whole background, my whole growing up becomes very relevant because there's great lawyers out there, but there's very few lawyers that know about the construction industry and then become lawyers. And that's so important. It's so important to know about the industry first.
I have my hand up.
Yes, sir.
May I address the bench?
Yes, yeah. Yes, sir.
Did they actually say that, or is that just what I saw on TV?
Oh, it's usually Your Honor.
Oh, Your Honor. Okay. Well, you're not. Listen, you're not a judge.
I'm not Your Honor.
You're not a judge. Yeah.
No.
But you've now raised an important point twice. And I hear this a lot when I'm talking to people. Hey, have you got a lawyer? Yeah, I got a great lawyer. But not all lawyers do the same job. That's like saying I have a hammer and one hammer will suit all purposes. I'm sorry that I just used the analogy of a lawyer and a hammer. But let me ask this as a question. Do you need a different lawyer for different legal tasks? For instance, your will versus, sadly, a divorce, versus collections, versus going to court, versus solving something without going to court. Do you need different lawyers for all of those tasks?
You need different lawyers for like the subject matter area, right? Like I would not handle your divorce, but on the construction side, I could definitely go to court for you. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So it's very specific industry wise, just like a doctor, right? I'm not going to go to an ophthalmologist for my knee, right? Same kind of thing. We're in our lane, and sometimes lawyers want to look for the work or want to learn an area, and so they might take their case and not actually know much about the industry, which is not the best fit for you. And and what happens a lot of times too is like if you have a personal injury case, you just go back to that lawyer because that's the lawyer that you know, and they might try to help you at first, but it's not really the perfect fit, just because the construction industry speaks its own language, has its own issues that are very, like I couldn't tell you what to put in your will or how to handle a divorce, but I know
Yeah.
about scopes and I know about change orders and all of those different things.
I would imagine that also there are new developments on the construction side of law, and
Yeah.
you probably get those newsletters and you probably go to those meetings and those conferences, and you have other friends who are construction law specialists, just like the personal injury people have their own sort of subgroup. And so let's put ourselves in the shoes of many of the people listening. They're in smaller towns and they've got a lawyer. He's just down the street. My family's used him forever. What do I do there when that lawyer I don't think is going to serve the purpose? He or she's good at everything. Is that the right lawyer for me to use?
Not in something like this. I mean, if you wanted just a general opinion, I find that even you can find a construction attorney in every state. My goal is to be in all 50 states for my firm. Right now, I do contracts and collections in all 50 states. So, like, pick up the phone. And here's the thing: is that you should know relatively quickly into the conversation if you're on the same page. And I find most of contractors will understand that, and just trust your gut on that, and then just keep looking till you find someone. And there's no problem with going to the lawyer down the street that's been in the family business just to ask his opinion. Start there, and if you don't feel satisfied with the answer, keep looking, because some of the local guys that's what they do.
Yeah.
And they might be very good at it, but trust your gut. They should speak your language.
Perfect. Yeah, I suppose the other problem that comes up with the guy down the street is conflict of interest, where he already represents the other guy. And now you're stuck and think, well, I'll never find another lawyer. There's always an option.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I'm sorry I took us off our game already, because as I said, today we're here to talk about something that you're a subject matter expert inside of construction law, which is how to get your money back.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's hugely important, right? So you work and then you wait to get paid. And so having that collection strategy, and what it boils down to is having a collection strategy in place before collections become an issue, right? So you set, and what I tell my clients to do is base it on your cash flow. How long can you go without that money, right? And then set that marker. Okay, here's when I'm going to send a letter. Here's when I'm turning it over to the attorney. And we can build one out that is based on the lien rights of your state. Because, and so for everybody who doesn't know, liens, mechanics and materialmen's liens, and they're called different things in different states. But when the founding of this country happened, and Thomas Jefferson was trying to find people to build the Capitol building, nobody would come to work because the U.S. wasn't exactly creditworthy. And so they were called mechanics at the time. They were people who built things, right?
Yeah.
Contractors, and they wouldn't do it because the U.S. had no money, right? And so he's like, okay, I promise you that if we don't pay you, you can have a lien or an interest in this property for the labor and material you provided until we can pay you.
Okay.
And so that's how the lien rights in the United States were born, is that they work on credit. You deserve to have a security interest for the amount that you're proving somebody's property with. And so there's mechanics lien rights in all 50 states. What you have to do to get a valid mechanics lien right in all 50 states is very different. But the right that, and I think this is important to know, and I try to explain it to judges all the time, is that before any of the states were here, most of the states were here, the United States thought it was so important to protect contractors that they created lien rights basically on the founding of the Constitution, right? That it's so ingrained in our system that this is such an important role that it's been here since the beginning.
Since forever, right? The protection of the people who've put in the work and the time and bought the materials.
Correct.
So what do you see? Oh my God, there's so much juice in this. Do people come to you typically too late or too early to talk about putting a lien on a property?
Normally,
a project.
Normally it's too late because contractors generally speaking, are not seeking out confrontation. And so they'll take a promise of payment, a promise of payment, a promise of payment, and then you're outside your lien rights. And there are some states, and I've just looked at one, that require you to send, like New Hampshire. You got to send notice before you start working, and then every 30 days thereafter. If you don't do that, then you don't have a lien right. So there's some states that require it beforehand. There's some states not till 90 days after. So it's really state specific. And if you miss that first step, you're out, right? Like
So
in North Carolina, you got to register with their that you're working on this project.
you have to register that you're working on a job.
Yeah, because they have a database that keeps track of jobs over $50,000. So it's, it's all very state specific. But knowing that it exists, knowing that you do have lien rights, you can make a system like, okay, here's my cutoff point. Or if I want to have a lien right, I know I got to do this on the front end.
Right.
So it's just knowing and planning accordingly.
Somebody listening is now just a little bit bummed out because they think, oh my goodness, I'm in one of those states and I didn't give notice that we're working on this job, and now we're in a collection situation. Is all lost, or could they, what do you do in that case? So
you still have the lien gives you an interest in the property. You still have what's called your breach of contract, right? So like whoever hired you on a contract, whether it's written or not, you promised to do work, they promised to pay you, they broke that promise when they didn't pay you, so you can still go to court and collect it that way. A greater leverage usually leads to faster collections is the lien right. And generally speaking, like what my office does is our goal is to collect your money, not file the lien. So we're making phone calls and we're sending letters and trying to gain that leverage of collecting the money before we ever file a lien.
Right. I was going to say, you don't actually care which tool you use to collect the money on my behalf. A lien is just one of the tools that you have, Karalynn, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, because you guys are good at collecting on.
Yes.
How did you have to learn that? What was the learning process for you guys? And if you don't mind, you and your husband have a material supply company, without going too much into it, but give us some perspective. What part of the building process do you guys supply?
So we supply to masonry contractors, stucco, EIFS, all of the kind of stuff, like all the stuff around that stone.
Okay. So it's residential material supply, or do you do
both? We sell, because we're just a material supplier. We'll supply to both commercial and residential contractors.
Oh, okay.
So, and which the residential guys and the commercial guys are, like, from a legal perspective, two very different animals. But the material suppliers are usually all in the same pot. Usually the rules are the same.
And you separated residential and commercial. Tell us a little bit about that. Remember, we're trying to educate this group so they understand, oh, I fall into this category, and so my action would be this. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So generally speaking, in all states, they feel that the homeowner, because they're not usually commercially savvy, deserves protections. And so generally, if there's a separation between residential and commercial, like in Texas, there is. Some states don't care. Usually on a residence, you have to give more notice and act earlier if you're a residential contractor, if you want to have lien rights, because most states feel like those people, the homeowners, are less savvy in the construction industry and they need more notice. And commercial, it's very much, okay, you're assumed to have known more, and there's not as much protection for the owners on the commercial contractor side. So you usually get longer notice times and stuff like that.
Okay. Well, thank you. You might think we're not on track with the background, but we all have to learn, we come at this from a different perspective, each of us. And so let's go back now to, you've dealt with this a lot, I'm sure. Let's go back to the emotional state of the contractor who comes to you and says, I don't know what to do. And let me just lay out a scenario that I hear is we're owed all this money, but this contractor is a really important client. I don't want to file a lien. I don't want to take them to collections, or they won't do business with us in the future. How would you come back to Mr. Dominic Rubino, contractor, on that?
My first thought is, like, do you like to work for free? Because if you're working for free, it's not a business, it's a charity, right? And I come at that and then the other perspective is if I'm going to send a notice and you were hired by the general contractor, if the general contractor has not been paid, if you send a notice to the owner, you're going to increase the likelihood that they will get paid. The customers that get angry are the ones that have gotten paid and haven't paid you already.
Okay, so repeat that again. So, because that's interesting, because what I did is I just sent a flag going over their head to say, you better pay this guy. So can you repeat that again a different way?
So the pushback is that my customer, if you're working for a general contractor, they'll never work for me again if I send this notice. From my experience, if the general contractor really has not been paid, If you send a notice saying, hey, owner, I haven't been paid, I'm getting ready to file a lien if you don't pay me, that shakes money loose for the general contractor who then can pay you. If there's pushback when you send a notice, that usually tells me they've already been paid some amount of money that should have been paid to you, and they're going to look like they haven't been doing their job or they did something else with the money. And so, especially from being the material supplier position, I cannot tell you how many millions of dollars I've shaken loose sending notice to the owner, right? And the sub can go in and say, hey, you better pay me. My material supplier, they don't miss their lien rights, and they're going to send notice to your owner. So you need to pay me, right? And so especially from the material supplier position, a sub can use that as leverage in the GC, right? You got to pay me because I have a very much on-time material supplier, and they will send notice.
They will send notice. That's an interesting one. Hopefully people are taking notes madly right now.
Yeah,
Keep that one in your back pocket, folks.
No. And if you don't get paid, call your material supplier and see if they're following their lien rights. Because here's the other thing that some contractors don't understand also is that you have a pay when paid clause with the general contractor in that sub position, right? You do not have a pay when paid clause with your material supplier. So meaning if you don't get paid, you still have to pay the material supplier. Mm-hmm. So it's in your best interest that they file a lien too. So even if they get paid, that's something less that you have to pay.
Yeah. This, this is going to go in a slightly different direction, but I'll talk to people about how they're growing their business, because everybody listening to my show is in some sort of growth mode. And quite often they're like, do I need to hire an administrator? Like, what's that person going to do? Really? How are they going to stay busy? But the administrivia, just taking care of the paperwork, these little things, like, in some states you have to give notice that you've started a job. So for those of you listening who have had just, let's say, $100,000 of debt that you've tried to collect over the year and it's always given you a headache, if you can collect that in time, you're already taking care of a big part of that person's salary just by having your paperwork in order. Am I wrong, by the way? Correct me if I'm
absolutely wrong. We do at my husband's company, we do tens of millions of dollars a year in gross revenue. We write off 0.01% or less. And so imagine what that would do to your cash flow if you had all that money in your bank instead of on your open invoice report. It can change the direction of a company.
Completely, yeah.
Well, and also too, especially from the material supplier perspective, you can extend credit to more people than you generally would if you can be secured by the property, right?
Right. So you're able to actually have a bigger impact in the economy.
Yeah, and you can grow the business if you can sell to more people, right? So there's lots of growth, there's lots of great ideas. It's just knowing what your rights are and setting it up right from the beginning. Mm-hmm. Taking the time to figure that out. And before I have a collection issue, before I have $100,000 on my open invoice report that I can't collect, if I get this, what is my cutoff? What do I have to do? And then just implement, like the administrator, here's the strategy. It's nothing personal. When we get to this point, here's what we do.
Do you ever talk about the future value of money? Like $1 today is different than $1 in 10 years.
And I look at it from when you sold this stuff 6 months ago, the longer we're trying to collect it, the less valuable it becomes, right?
The more willing I am to take less, because exactly. I just want to clear this off.
Yeah, exactly. So, absolutely.
Okay, so let's get to the topic. How do I collect my money with all due respect?
And so when I first started on the collection thing, I was very aggressive and whatever. And I really find that doesn't help anybody. And so when I make phone calls, it's just very much informational. Here's what's going on. Here's what I'm trying to do. Mm-hmm. Here's what my lien rights are. Here's what's going to happen if I'm not paid. And so it's not anything personal. It's just, here's the process. And I can tell you, if you set up the process and you follow it, people will respect it. Because I used to, when we first started this collection process for the material supply company, I used to get 50, 60 files a month. And over the years, it's now down to 5 or 6 because people know the process. People know that we're going to file our liens. We're going to send our notice. So we get moved to the top of the list to be paid as opposed to the bottom. Like somebody else who does not do that is going to get paid after we do.
Yeah. Being at the top of the list is such an important thing because somebody's going to get paid.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be the person who's just quiet and nice and in the background.
And it's nothing personal, guys. Like, you promised to do a job, you did it, you deserve to be paid. And it doesn't have to be emotional. You just, here's my timelines, here's what I'm going to do. And the predictability of here's the process that's always the same way alleviates a lot of the, I can't believe you're doing this. No, this is what we always do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then it's not such a surprise.
So let's flip this around for a second, because we're having the conversation very focused that we are the train, we're on the track, the headlights are facing forward, that little cattle mover in the front, like we're barreling through this contract, this customer, whether it's a residence or commercial. But let's look at it from their side. When they come back and talk to you and say, but hang on, this irrigation contractor didn't install their irrigation along the left side of our sidewalk. I just totally made that up, right? Or the countertops are something happened. So as the contractor, I did the bulk of the work, but there's still something that needs to be fixed. And so the homeowner's saying, look, the only recourse I have is not pay the guy, but he's not showing up. How do you deal with that kind of thing?
And so that happens from time to time, right? And so we send the notice, and this is what we get back. And we take it to our client and say, hey, this is what they're saying. And most of the times we can resolve it either by fixing it and so it's either one of two things. Yes, it's a valid issue, it needs to be fixed, or no, it's not. And it's just try to push off payment. Right.
Right.
And so like I had a phone call the other day, is the contractor, it's like a $4,000 job, is owed $780. And they got this long list they got a general statement of, you need to come fix these things, blah, 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 or it's a breach of contract. Right. And they're like, oh, I want to file a lien. I'm like, let's wait. Hold on a second, right? They're saying they have, and he sent a list back asking for what specifically do you want, and they haven't heard anything. And I'm like, if you file a lien, it's like sticking your hand into wasp nest, because now, I'm not saying they're right, but I'm just saying the fight that's going to ensue is going to be way more expensive than $780. And so in this instance, I think what we're going to do is we're going to improve the punch out process in your contract. And take that as a learning lesson. And it was worth every penny that we lost to improve this process, so it won't happen again.
Yeah.
So it's all very much a balance of, and my honest opinion is if there is an honest gripe, where you end up at the end of the day is in a courtroom, or if you have an arbitration, but in a courtroom, judges and juries are homeowners before they're contractors. And it is not a place that a contractor wants to end up, because they have no idea how the construction industry works or what a punch out list is all they see is like this scratch on the wall that blown up at 50 sides, and they can't, 50 times, and they can't believe that somebody would leave the house that way. Yeah, and you're like, right. It's just punch items. I promise I was coming back, but they fired me. And so all those things have got to come into play before we decide if we're going to move forward with the lien or if they're being unreasonable.
Yeah.
It's very much a case by case basis.
I'm torn right now, Karalynn. Do I ask about our feelings, which is, not something we talk about here, because this is, contractors, but communication, how much does communication play a part in this? Because, and I was a contractor as well. I've had horrible customers who I didn't want to talk to, but I still had to get the job done and then get the heck out of that property. So how much does on the contractor side, if I was a better communicator, how much would that solve these collections issues?
I think it'd help a lot. There's still going to be people that are difficult. And the one thing I can tell you is that 90% of the contractors that end up in my office are like, I knew I shouldn't have done this job. Yeah. There were signs at the beginning. And all I can say is like, trust that gut and let somebody else handle that job, because that's truly it, so you'd like hold your nose and try to get through it, and it never goes the way it's supposed to. And there's always something wrong. But what I try to do, especially the big thing that I'm pushing on is, especially repair remodels or people that are doing, is that we get one punch item. Like, you give me the list of things, we're going to do this one time, you're going to sign off, you're going to issue final payment. If you didn't get it on that list, it's a warranty claim. And I don't honor warranty claims until I'm paid in full. And so being upfront about that process and that this is going to happen, because usually, especially on the residential side, it comes down to the last payment and they're never happy. You keep going out and you still don't get paid. And so this is a way that you can, nip that in the bud and say, here's our process. You upfront about it. We're going to go through one time. You're going to sign off and that's it. And that, I think that helps alleviate a lot of the collection issues.
Well, and the challenge is if we don't have a process, then it just gets made up as we go along, and life becomes very reactive. And stress goes through the roof. But if you say, look, here's the process. This is how custom home renovations are done in Washington County. We're at stage X. That means you have to pay this much. And then if you want to give me a punch list, that's fine. We will fix those within this many days. Final payment is due. But that also has to be part of the beginning conversation, not the end.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so one of the things that I do as a business coach, when somebody approaches me and, we're starting to work together, they go, we have a bit of a collections problem. The collections problem is at the end, right? So I'm trying to use an analogy, but the only one I can think of is extremely impolite. So I'm not gonna. But if you have a collections problem, you have to go look at the beginning of your process, not the end of it. Okay. So you probably have a marketing issue. You probably have a sales/estimating issue. You probably have an engineering issue, and you definitely have a communication issue. And so those are the things we'd work on. And lo and behold, funny how it is, the collection problem sort of melts away, but you still got to go collect that money, because 20 grand that you're owed today is, there's actual math on this, and I won't do it on, but that's 20 grand today. It's 23 grand next month. It's 26 grand the month after that. And then it starts to compound, and I can't do that. Yeah.
No, but yeah, absolutely. And so and I agree. The more proactive you can be on it, the less likely you would need somebody like me, and, improving those processes and being upfront. I think expectations being managed properly on any project will prevent you from ending up in my office, whether that's defects, or whether that's schedule issues, or whether that's, collection issues, is just being upfront.
Yeah. Well, listen, you've dropped two juicy tidbits on us today. I hope people were taking notes, or just go back and re-listen to the episode. If somebody wants to find you, which I'm sure they do. Oh, by the way, did you know I have your book?
Yes. My book, Quit Getting Screwed. I love that book.
I mean, before I even met you, I had the book, and I'm like, that's quite the title. Quit Getting Screwed. And then you've got another one, though. And what's it called?
Quit Getting Stiffed. That's actually specifically lien rights in Texas. You
definitely have a sense of humor.
If you've been in the construction industry long enough, you've either been screwed and stiffed, or both, or one or the other.
Yeah. Well, and then on the one, this one here, Quit Getting Screwed, you got a picture of a hard hat. On the picture of on the book of Quit Getting Stiffed, you've got a big traffic cone.
Yep.
Yeah. Excellent use of visuals.
I'm speaking to my audience.
Yeah, no kidding. But I think I got this one on Amazon.
Yes. Yep. Yes.
So understanding and negotiating the subcontract, which you've talked about on the show before. You're very well versed in all aspects of construction law. So if somebody wants to find you, how the heck would we do that? And go ahead, tell us how we find you.
Absolutely. It's the CromeensLawFirm.com, and Cromeens is CROMEENS, or my office number is 713-715-7334. And we have free consultations. We're here to answer all the questions. A lot of my job is improving residential contracts, or drafting residential contracts, or terms and conditions based on how long your project is. So we're here for everyone. And the main thing is just knowing that you have us as a resource that you can just call and ask a question. There's no charge. We can advise you, and either I can help you, or I can say I can't help you. But somebody that speaks your language and knows how the industry works and works with legal.
Yeah. Now you mentioned that you work in all states. So assuming Texas is the center of the universe, which as we all know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So if somebody's up in Washington State, or somebody's way over in Maine, or if somebody's down in California, or somebody's way on the tip of Florida, you could still.
Yes, absolutely.
Sorry, I forgot about Hawaii and the outer islands.
I would love to have a client in Hawaii that I could go visit.
All you got to do is ask.
I know. And my daughter's actually considering going to college there. That'd be very exciting.
Wouldn't that be exciting? I'm actually just booking right now a trip to Molokai to go bonefish fishing.
Really? Awesome.
Yeah. In February, I should be out there. So for both Karalynn and I, if you have any interest, if you're in Hawaii, let us know, because exactly. We have excuses.
Looking for clients in Hawaii.
We're looking for reasons. Yeah. Okay. Karalynn, thank you so much for being on the show. Always crazy educational, and your casual style, but professionalism comes through. So you know what you're talking about, and you're not trying to pretend that you know construction. You know construction, and this is your happy place.
Yes, this is what I love to help. I want to help, because I think there's lots of pitfalls out there that everyday contractors could use. And so, I'm a sounding board for risk evaluation and all. people always think like lawyers like going to the dentist and you put it off, you put it off. We're actually better, very better on preventative care. So,
Oh,
coming to us and just talking about what does your contract look like, before all that happens is I think is extremely helpful.
yeah. Great. Well, Karalynn, thank you so much for being on the show. I am positive we'll have you back again.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, well, well. Thank you, Karalynn, for being on the show. We always appreciate having you on and your insights. There was at least two great tips that you gave us there. I really like the one where you said, make sure that you put a lien on a property by going above the general contractor to the owner of the property, because that's going to shake some money loose. And if it doesn't, it tells you that that GC already got paid and isn't paying you. Then you've got to take your next steps as well. Obviously, you know how to reach Karalynn. Here's her book again if you want to see it. Quit Getting Screwed. And then she's got another one called Quit Getting Stiffed. I got this one on Amazon. It's a great read. It's very straightforward, and I'm sure you're going to love it. Listen, at the end of this, we're now going to have story time with Dom. So stay tuned for that. That's where I tell real stories about real people in real situations and what we're really, really doing about it. I hope you enjoyed that segment. It's coming up next. Thanks.